Hey guys, all right. So this is the harder of the sections when it comes to making homemade pizza at home from scratch, and it's the dough. It's making great pizza dough, which will in turn make great pizza crust. I'm going to go over the ingredients you need, and I'm going to go over the process of kneading the dough because kneading the dough is very challenging. Expect to have a little bit of tired arm muscles and maybe a little bit of sweat off your brow. It's going to be physical work to knead it. Unless you have a machine that does that for you, all the power to you. This is how to do it by hand. If you're able to substitute with a machine, that's great. So, like I said, I'm going to go over the ingredients and the process. Afterwards, I'll tell you how I make my dough, how much I use for ingredients, and the yield I get. But you really can look online for different pizza dough recipes, and you're probably going to be just fine. But there are a couple things that I need to point out so that your pizza comes out as good tasting as possible. So the quality of your flour. Now, when it comes to the ingredients in pizza dough, there's only two. You have a large ability. I can't even speak properly right now, but there are two factors that you have the most say on, and that's the type of flour you use and the type of extra virgin olive oil you use. Yeast, salt, sugar, water, pretty straightforward. So what I recommend for flour is the best brand possible. You don't want your generic or your regular brand flour. You want them. I mean, I hate to say it, but the most expensive flour is probably going to be your best bet. But flour is not that expensive, so the most expensive brand is like $1 more for a 5-pound bag, $1.50 more. So it's really not that big of a difference in cost, particularly when you break it down per pizza how much you're paying for the flour. So better flour. The brand that I've found works great, and also a lot of pizza makers will agree, is King Arthur's. King Arthur's brand, readily available in a lot of places. If you can find King Arthur's brand, I highly recommend it. If not, go to find pizza places in your community, and good pizza places that are very popular. Find out where they buy their flour. If you have to order it online, you have to order it online. If you have it available locally, great. So it doesn't have to be King Arthur's. My point is get the better, more expensive brand flour. Even more important than that is the type of flour. Don't make your pizza with all-purpose flour. You can, but I'm pretty sure your guests are going to be more impressed. Pardon me. They're going to be more impressed with the flavor of your pizza if you're using bread flour. Bread flour. Or, if you want to be daring, high gluten flour. So bread flour or high gluten flour. That's going to be your difference maker right there. Bread flour is going to give it that puffy, chewy, doughy texture. Picture like a Pizza Hut or Domino's, Papa John's. Typical crust you'll find at a pizza chain. Or high gluten. High gluten flour is going to be more of that authentic Italiano restaurant pizza. It's a little thinner, a little denser, a little more flavorful. High gluten or bread flour makes great pizzas. And then all-purpose, it just doesn't have enough gluten in it. Bread flour has more gluten. High gluten has even more gluten. You want gluten for your pizza crust, trust me. So all-purpose flour, I don't recommend. Definitely want. Now, I use bread flour normally if it's easier to knead than at high gluten. High gluten flour is a little trickier. So if you're serious about this, work with bread flour until you get used to it. And when you can make good pizza crust with your bread flour, then step up to the plate and try high gluten. But high gluten is just a little bit harder, I've noticed, to work with when you're kneading it. So bread flour, high gluten flour, expensive or better brand flour overall. Yeast, you can get it in bulk, and then you just have to measure carefully with a teaspoon. Or you can get those little square packets of yeast. Now, there's different kinds of yeast. I don't recommend rapid rise or instant rise. You want just the regular one that rises over like a period of a couple hours as it sits. So it's yeast, but it's not the rapid rise yeast. Forgive me if I'm not as super precise with that. I can answer questions, of course, down below. So you got your yeast, you got your good flour, bread flour or high gluten. water, sugar, and salt. So I'm going to go over the process of kneading the dough, and then I'll end with telling you how I actually make my dough step by step, but in a quick manner. So with kneading the dough, you've already mixed all your ingredients up. You have this big ball of squishy flour and whatnot. Now kneading it, it's really just about squishing it into the counter, folding it into over itself. So it's like taking a book and closing it, squishing that down, and spread it out. You can use your fist, the heels of your hand, whatever you want. Just bam, be rough with it. My first time I made it, I was too gentle with it, and I didn't get kneaded enough, and it was like I had a cardboard texture. Damn, man, talk about waste of money. The cheese is the most expensive part by far. So unless you have some fancy toppings. So you're kneading it hard for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, if you kneaded it hard, you're good. It's not, that'll be enough. You want to go to 10, go to 10. But just hit that 5-minute mark of kneading it, folding in half, squish, spread, fold it in half, squish, spread, okay? Blah, blah, blah. Someday I'll show you like on a little video on how to do it step by step. So that's kneading your dough. So again, what I'm going to do now is the overall process is I use the following. This will make 2 medium-sized pizzas, 2 12-inch pizzas. 3½ cups of bread flour in a bowl. Then I have a ½ a cup put aside for when I need it, or I need to sprinkle it on the stone before I put the pizza in. So 4 cups of flour total, 3½ in your bowl, a half put aside. 1 packet of yeast, 1½ cups of warm water, bath temperature water. You don't want it hot enough to burn your hand or you'll kill the yeast. And you don't want it like cool to the touch because it doesn't wake the yeast up fast enough. You want warm water about 90 degrees. Bath water, think bath water, 1½ cups. Okay, you have a 1½ cups of warm water. You put your packet of yeast in. You put 1 teaspoon of sugar. The yeast like to eat the sugar. Stir it up. Wait 5 minutes. You'll see it foam. You know it's alive. It's foaming. It's alive. Yeast is good. You don't want to kill the yeast. You don't want to put salt in there. Salt in the water, kill the yeast. If the water's too hot, it'll kill the yeast. Your dough won't rise. So 1½ cups of the warm water. You got your teaspoon of sugar. Packet of yeast. Stir. 5 minutes. Foams. Great. Your other bowl, you have that 3½ cups of flour. You're also going to put 1 or 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, your choice. Now with extra virgin olive oil, unlike the flour, if you don't get a fancy expensive brand, it's still going to taste great. The more expensive, the better quality your extra virgin olive oil, the better your pizza will taste, but it's subtle. Not a big deal. So whatever extra virgin olive oil you can afford should be fine. 1 or 2 tablespoons. You can substitute an egg in there. You can play with that'll work too. But I usually use 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil in the flour mixture. 2 teaspoons of salt. Sprinkle it in the flour as well. So you have your salt, flour, and extra virgin olive oil in the bowl. Then you have your yeast, sugar, and water in the other bowl. Pour the water yeast mixture into the flour. Stir for about a minute, 30 seconds. It'll clump together pretty fast. Then you take that big ball of dough and do your kneading thing. 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes of kneading. After you've kneaded your dough for 5 minutes, you have a good size ball of dough. Cut it in half. Make 2 smaller balls of dough. Put both of those balls of dough into a container, Tupperware, plastic container, a metal pot, whatever you want that you can cover. Put a little bit of olive oil on the dough ball and cover it so that it's slick, so it doesn't dry out. Put it in the bowl, cover it with a cloth of some sort, and let it sit for 2 hours in room temperature or a little bit warmer than room temperature. And then it will rise. After 2 hours, it should double to triple in size. After 2 hours, take the cover off. It's gotten huge. Punch it down. Not hard. Just softly punch it down. It lets the air out, carbon dioxide, I believe, and then let it sit. Let it rest for at least 5 minutes or 10 minutes, give or take, somewhere in that range. Let it rest. After the 5 or 10 minutes of it resting, you can turn the bowl upside down, peel it out, and then you got to form it into a pizza shell. It's hard. I'm not going to be able to explain that in words, how to form it into a pizza shell. Look online on how to form a pizza shell. Basically, you can use a roller or your hands. And who cares if it's not perfectly round? You just spread it out. Don't put holes in it. Don't stretch it thin. Go slow so that it stays, so it doesn't get too thin in any one part. Unfortunately, like I said, it's hard to explain that in words. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. That is how you make your pizza dough. All right.